Michelle Hood is the president and CEO at Northern Light Health in Brewer, Maine. She came to Northern Light Health, formerly Eastern Maine Healthcare Systems, in April 2006 from Billings, Montana, where she was president and CEO of the Sisters of Charity of Leavenworth Health System, Montana region, as well as president and CEO of its flagship hospital, St. Vincent Healthcare. As president and CEO of Northern Light Health, she focuses on healthcare policy and design models at the state and national levels, positioning the system to be successful in a rapidly changing healthcare environment. Hood builds partnerships that work for Maine communities, strengthening the economic and educational climate of the state. She is an at-large American Hospital Association board member. She is also past chair of the Maine Hospital Association Board and is on several community and national boards, including past chairs of both the University of Maine System Board of Trustees and the Vizient New England Board. She currently serves as chair of Health Insights, a national membership organization focused on education and dialogue between a group of health executives and companies that support the industry. Hood received a Bachelor of Science degree from Purdue University and a Master of Healthcare Administration degree from Georgia State University. She is the proud recipient of Purdue's School of Biological Sciences 2015 Outstanding Alumna Award, along with several other community recognitions. She is a seasoned executive dedicated to the transformation of the healthcare delivery and financing models. She brings her experience in academic, national faith-based, and rural healthcare integrated systems to the challenges of today's rapidly changing environment. Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, a podcast all about growing your network and building your brand through traditional and digital networking techniques. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. I've been strengthening brands through PR for over 35 years, and now I'm celebrating the success of executives, influencers, business owners, and entrepreneurs from all around the world, all of whom have cultivated their brands and broadened their networks through traditional and digital networking methods. Each week, I interview one of these interesting and influential individuals and provide an opportunity for you, the PR Maven Nation, to gain insights from their strategies and stories. So stay tuned for this week's episode, and thanks for listening. So Michelle, to kick things off, tell us about your career and how you got into it in the first place.
Okay, well, that's a long story. I've been working in this field now for right at 40 years. And I actually started out in my education thinking that I was going to be a laboratory scientist. I was in a graduate program for neurophysiology at Purdue University, and I loved the science part of it, but I did not like the lab environment very well. There's not a lot of social interaction when you're surrounded by things in jars and dead animals and things like that. So I actually was, as most grad students do, I was teaching part-time at the university as well. And another faculty member and I went out for a pitcher of beer one night, and I said to Paul, Paul, this is not going to be for me. And now I need to figure out what to do. And he says, well, have you ever thought about health or hospital administration? And it's what it was called. And it was a fairly new discipline for graduate work. There were only about 12 or 14 accredited programs in the entire U.S. at that time, this was in 1978. And so I began to do a little bit of research into that and ended up moving to Atlanta to go to a grad program in Atlanta, and fell in love with it. And at that point and in that program, I actually was required to do what was called a residency post the didactic portion of the education. And I chose Emory University Hospital, a big academic teaching hospital in Atlanta. My husband was working in Atlanta at the time. We didn't want to move. And just absolutely fell in love with the hospital and everything that goes on within it. It's a very diverse, complex, especially when you're talking about teaching organizations. I could use my analytic skills, I could use my science skills. I began to develop some people skills, some leadership and so forth, and I've been doing it ever since.
So did those people skills, you mentioned those last, you said,
Yeah.
Is that something that you didn't develop prior to that?
Well, I hadn't taken any leadership classes. I was in science, so I hadn't taken formal training in management and leadership. I have always had a bent towards certain types of leadership capabilities. During school, I was the one, who was the editor of the school paper and those kinds of things. So I knew I liked to work with teams and work with people. But you never know, whether or not some of those skills are going to be something that you can really develop and grow. And so I do think that people think, oh, I can lead a team, and you find you don't have the training in conflict resolution, or you might have a special gift in that area, but I've been a student of working with people ever since.
Yeah, I think that's some might call it a soft skill, but it's certainly necessary in business.
Absolutely.
You talked about things in jars, and it brought back this vision for me of, I think it was 10th grade biology, of the fetal pig.
The fetal pig, or the shark, or the frog, or, those things.
I've thought about that fetal pig for a long time. I don't need to do that on a daily basis.
Yeah, Petri dishes. I would go home at the end of the day in my lab coat and hang my lab coat up and empty my pockets, and I'd have slides and Petri dishes and all sorts of stuff in my pockets, and my husband would say, "Oh my God, what is that stuff?"
Yeah, right. You can leave that at work. Thank you very much.
Exactly, yeah.
So if you had it to do all over again, is there anything you would do differently in your career?
Oh, sure. Yeah. There's things I would do differently, not big things. For example, I probably stayed at my first job too long. After I finished my residency at Emory, they asked me to stay on, and I stayed, and over a course of about 13 years, climbed the ladder, did increasingly higher level work for the organization. But, I think it's really important that people have diverse experiences, and you've seen one hospital, you've seen one health system. So I would have probably shouldn't have stayed more than 7 or 8 years in that first job, in that first place. I had lots of jobs while I was there, but in that first place. And it really opened my eyes when I took my next move and moved over to Birmingham, actually, to be the chief operating officer of a large teaching hospital there, and got to see it from a different perspective, and got a little bit of outside experience outside the four walls of the organization by working with the community and beginning to pay attention to regulatory and state legislative types of things that influence so much of what we do, where I didn't have any of that exposure when I was at Emory. So I think that was probably, I learned that lesson quickly. I said, this is amazing. Nobody told me about this, the importance of this. And since then I've worked in 3 other, this is my 5th place of work here in Maine. So I've been able to really diversify my experience.
Well, I think also there was a time when we were encouraged to stay in a job in the, if you jumped around, people say, oh, that's not going to look good on your resume.
Yes.
But now I don't think that's as much of a factor, because I think people see an opportunity and they're more likely to go for it. They're not worried about what their resume looks
like. Exactly. And I tell young people, we typically have an administrative fellow on our team. And I've been the mentor for many young folks over the years, or new to the field of healthcare. And I said, take some risks. I mean, it's important not to get too much in your comfort zone. And I think you can't always do that at a single place.
Right. Well, and then there's the imposter syndrome. I know that I might have hesitated to jump at certain opportunities because I felt like, I'm not qualified, or they're going to find out that I really don't know what I'm doing.
Why would they interview me? Yeah,
and it's now actually kind of that I'm in sort of the last part of my career that I'm like, oh, I only have this many more years, so I'm going to go for it. And
try everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I have sort of this new sense of confidence that I'm kind of in the last few years of my career. Well, who knows, but in any case.
You never know about that.
Yeah. So is there an example of how public relations and social media have helped you personally, or have helped one of the organizations that you've worked with?
Well, certainly I have been intrigued by the doors that are opened with social media for me personally and professionally. And I'm not a big Facebooker. I'm on there, but I do connect with a lot of my friends from the various places I've worked across the country, and family and so forth. LinkedIn, I think, is a really cool tool, and it's amazing how many contacts I get through LinkedIn, and I could use it more. I should use it more. I have to get a little more discipline around that. But as you said, when you're in the 40th year of your career, I probably am not as prone to be wanting to extend my network for professional purposes, other than to learn what's going on in the field and in other fields that are relevant. So certainly, personally, I do use some social media. I've been encouraged by my board not to tweet and to be very circumspect in that regard. But as an organization, we certainly do a lot of social media through the usual sites and so forth. And so, for example, this weekend is our Champions the Cure, one of our biggest philanthropic events of the year in Bangor. And a lot of our followership has come through social media as that event has grown over the years, from something fairly small just 6 or 8 years ago to, I think we're going to have lots of people there this weekend. And
well, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that, bringing people together under your brand umbrella, and people will make friends with each other, and they'll always remember that they met at the Champions for a Cure. And it's just a really great way, I think, to grow your brand and your organization.
Absolutely. And advocacy. We have over 200 corporators that are part of our governance structure, and staying in touch with them is much easier through the digital world than it was in the olden days, when you had to rely on even just email. That people don't necessarily want to read their email, but they'll check a web page and stay informed that way.
Yeah. That's something about email, is that people do get oftentimes too much email, so you have to be kind of careful about what you send out and make sure that it's of service, or people find it helpful.
Right. Or they'll just ignore you.
Yeah, exactly. Or unsubscribe.
Yes.
I always think of the radio station called WIIFM, which is what's in it for me. And everybody, if you're clogging up their email inbox, there's got to be something in it for them.
Right.
And that goes to sort of knowing who your avatars or your personas are. And in our pre-interview chat, actually, we were talking about how you have a lot of different personas, or a lot of different audiences. And there's your internal audience, like your own employees, and you have how many different sites that you're overseeing?
Well, we have in total right now 9 inpatient facilities. We have about 40 clinics. We have 8 long-term care, rehabilitative, and skilled facilities. We have a statewide home care agency. We have a population health company. We have a foundation. We have some for-profit companies like our lab services. We have retail pharmacy, 5 sites retail pharmacy. So we are spread out over the entire state.
I mean, I always go to sort of mapping. I'm kind of thinking of a map of all those, and then each of those has their own community and audience.
Exactly.
And tentacles into the.
And each of our 9 hospitals still have a board. So this morning I spent my first couple of hours in Ellsworth at Maine Coast at their board meeting, and they have their agenda and their strategies that they're working on, and communicating with them around specific issues of interest for them is important. So we're always looking for ways to improve communication. Communication is the glue that holds it all together, and it's oftentimes, it's never precise, it's never perfect, but I try to make as much time as I can to have those points of contact, both personally and digitally, with folks all over the state, and really all over the country.
You know, I know you don't tweet, but that would have been a really good tweet. Communication is the glue that holds it all together. Like when you said that, I'm like, bing!
Pithy one-liners.
Yeah, that was a really good one. I like that. Being in the communication business.
Right.
So what have been some of the obstacles to success in your career, and how have you overcome them?
You know, obstacles, anytime you work in a large, complex organization, there's always politics, internal politics, and at first, when I first started my career, particularly in academic medicine, politics is just part of the fabric of the organization, and you have to be able to navigate it. So I had a great mentor. I had a fantastic mentor when I first started out. He happened to be the chief financial officer of the organization. And he and I both had similar work habits, that we like to work late into the evening because things kind of quieted down and you could really get a lot of things done. So it became our habit pretty routinely a couple times a week, where it got to be 6:30 or 7, and then I would go up to Bob's office and sit on the other side of the desk from him, and we both put our feet on his desk and we talk about the day or the week or what was going on. And he was tremendous at helping me to understand the undercurrents and the nuances of organizational dynamics. And I think a lot of young people, young career people, don't necessarily have that mentor that prevented me from making some bad blunders. And, you know, taught me about how to stay above it, to understand it and to watch it, and not to be naive about it, but to stay above it at every opportunity to do so. And so I think that gave me some emotional intelligence points that I would have gained probably in my career, but probably through bumps and bruises rather than through good mentorship.
Yeah, well, weren't you lucky to have him?
I was.
Is he still working? Are you still in touch with him?
I'm still in touch with him, but he's been retired for 20 years now.
And I hope he knows, though, the impact
Oh,
he
absolutely.
had.
I've talked about him in many, many settings, and written articles about me and so forth, and I always take a picture and send it to him when I mention his name, because
That's great.
he absolutely was critical to my early career.
That's great.
Yeah.
I also had mentors, and sometimes I think of them as like riding on my shoulder.
Absolutely.
And watching out for me. And I do think that I need to pay it forward too. And so one of the things that I love about having a small business, as I do, is hiring young people and seeing them grow in their positions and learning things, and sometimes teaching me things as well.
Absolutely. We have in our organization a pretty formal succession plan, and at any given time I've probably got 25 names of up-and-comers on my list. They don't all know they're on my list, but I take special time to follow their work and encourage them and push opportunities their direction. So sometimes I think one of the best things that someone who has aspirations in an organization is to volunteer for things outside their real job, and work in teams and work in areas that might not be your home base, but could give you a different perspective to the work that we're doing. So I truly believe in career development, personal development from within as well.
You know, there's a book called Traction that at my agency, we read it several years ago, and we created a leadership team. And the whole premise of Traction is you bolster your organization by having this leadership team, and every quarter, every member of the leadership team takes on something we call a rock, which is a big, hairy, audacious project or goal that's outside of their normal day-to-day work, but it's usually something that will help grow the company itself. And that was really transformational for us. So now I have 5 people on this leadership team, and we've accomplished so much just in 2 years, because each quarter we're all, me included, we all take on something, and we hold each other's feet to the fire every week. We have a meeting. How are you doing? Are you on track? And so creating this podcast actually was one of my one of my goals.
Yeah. So we have we shake up our organization quite a lot too. We have, I call it the chart, but it's a pretty comprehensive roadmap of all the active teams in the organization, and I'm constantly going back to the chart and saying, are we spending people's time in the right places? Are we opening up those opportunities for growth and learning and trying new things by having resources, including the resource of time, which is sometimes the most critical, so that we can make advancements, that we can try new things, that we can innovate, that we can do things from a multidisciplinary perspective rather than just have the finance guys look at the finance stuff and the ops guys look at the ops. And I use guys as gender neutral. Yeah, it's been very successful for us mixing it up that way.
Yeah. Well, I admire you because you've got so many moving parts going on, and you're sitting here and you're so calm. I don't know if inside your stomach is churning, but I know mine would be.
There's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of that for sure.
So hats off to you.
Yeah. I think to do this kind of work, you have to kind of be an adrenaline junkie. So.
You mentioned, again, in our pre-interview chat about how you're a morning person and you get to work early, and then you mentioned that you work late into the evening. So and you only require 5 hours of sleep a night.
Usually about that.
I think that any employer is lucky to have you, because it sounds like you're putting in your time.
I definitely put in my time. I don't think about it though that as work. So it's a passion that I have, and I can't imagine doing anything different.
Well, again, we're not tweeting, but that would have been a tweet, and I feel that
she's going to talk me into it before we're done with this.
The main PR maven does have a Twitter, so I'm going to probably be tweeting those pithy comments, as you said. But we're going to take a short break and come back in a moment with Michelle. But now it's a chance to win your PR Maven Nation Things to Do Today pad, which is highly coveted among PR Maven Nation members, and a copy of my book, PR Works, which you might get in the mail, Michelle, so you don't need to register, although you can join PR Maven Nation on Facebook. Oh, and speaking of PR Maven Nation, we're planning our 1-year anniversary party in Portland, Maine on September 25th. And anybody who knows me knows that I love a party. And our most popular podcast guest of the year, Lieutenant Tim Cotton of the Bangor Police Department, is going to be there. I'm going to be doing a live interview with him, and we've been emailing back and forth about that today. So I'm really looking forward to September 25th, and everyone is welcome to join us. So we'll be back in just a moment after we hear about the Marshall Plan. This podcast is all about growing your network in order to strengthen your brand. In my 30-plus year marketing and PR career, I have seen many organizations waste their precious time and money on marketing because they're trying to obtain success without any strategy to achieve their goals. So many organizations and companies suffer from what I call the shiny object syndrome, trying every new fad that comes down the pike. That's why I created the Marshall Plan 15 years ago. We have done over 100 of these plans for clients, helping them to get out of their day-to-day routine to identify their goals, solidify their brand story, focus in on their ideal customer avatar, analyze their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and create a realistic budget and measurement dashboard. We create the Marshall Plan collaboratively with our clients, over the course of 3 months. We have a 65-step process to create a highly customized, actionable plan. And it's not like we come in and say, we are the consultants from away and we know everything. Instead, we come in and say, let's sit down at the table with your leadership team and we'll bring our expertise in what's working in PR and marketing. And our client team brings their knowledge of what's working in their organization. And together, we come up with a really amazing plan. For many, it's been a transformative process. I have watched how teams have come together and their faces light up because they have such a sense of accomplishment and they're so excited about the future of their organization. We help our client figure out the best way to implement the plan, sometimes using people within their organization and sometimes with our help. We would love to chat with you about how you can expand your network and achieve your marketing goals with a Marshall Plan. Go to marshallpr.com/MarshallPlan to learn more about the process, or better yet, send me an email at nancy@prmaven.com and we'll set up a time to talk and get started. And now back to our conversation. So welcome back, and today we're talking with Michelle Hood, CEO of Northern Light, and I want to dive right back in with some more questions. And Michelle, I know that your position oversees a lot of different functions, but one of the functions is the marketing function, and you have a couple of members of your team here with you today, and I've been enjoying learning about what they do. How do you measure success in your PR and marketing efforts?
Well, a number of different ways, as probably most companies do. Certainly, we monitor any of our digital sites to look at activity, hits or likes or any of those types of things. We do formal surveying fairly routinely around the impact of our brand. We just rebranded our organization last October. It was a big deal to go from Eastern Maine Healthcare Systems to Northern Light Health, and we're still working at it. You never finish your brand. I mean, you're always working on improving and making sure that the work that you do is consistent with the brand that you put out there to the community and the promises that you make to the people that you serve. So we do survey to see how we're doing with awareness, as well as being consistent and living our brand promise. We measure our marketing and communications also through our patient satisfaction, because a lot of what the patient experiences within our organization starts before they even come. It's what they expect when they walk in the door. And so are we meeting their expectations? Are we exceeding those? And I think marketing and communications is a big part of our success or our opportunity for improvement in that area. And then our internal audiences tell us through engagement surveys and so forth how well they understand what we're doing. So I think our communications is successful if every one of our 13,000 team members understands how they contribute to the work of the organization as a whole. And I'm very proud of our scores in that area. People understand why they do what they do and how it contributes, which is important. I have about 160 board members scattered around the state, and certainly how I communicate with them is always being improved. And one board member has a different need than another. So I've got to, through our communication strategies, use multiple media to reach the audiences that we want to reach, both internally and externally.
Well, one thing you said, when you talk about a brand, you talk about it in terms of a brand promise. And I think that's awesome, because you did make a big change to your name and to your logo and tagline and all of that. But a brand really is a feeling. It's how somebody thinks about you and feels really in their heart.
Yep, absolutely.
About the organization, and that is a promise, and promises kept or not. And if you don't, then how do you recover from that?
Exactly. And we believe that our brand is also aspirational. It's something that we work to live up to, and we kind of try to move the bar, continue to improve the performance. Making healthcare work for you is an awesome aspirational goal.
Right, exactly, yeah. Well, that's great. And it must be a challenge having all of those, you said 160 board members?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes. Well, I'm on a board of a nonprofit, and yeah, it goes both ways, I guess, because you have a responsibility to them, and obviously they have a responsibility to you as well.
Well, the great thing, though, is that people who join our boards, I mean, they're well informed before they say yes about what the commitment is, and to a person, they have a personal passion and connection to healthcare, and they bring that to the table. So you're starting off with a enthusiastic, dedicated group of folks who want to work with us to make things work better.
Right, they have that passion.
Yeah.
And it's that passion that drives you as well. So
Absolutely.
You want to put that in a jar, like the fetal pig.
Yeah. Much better than the fetal pig.
Right. I'm going to have that fetal pig on my mind all day, I'm afraid. I had not thought about that since 10th grade. So most successful people have a network of fans and followers, either online or in person or both. How have you built your network of fans and followers, and has it been a conscious goal or has it happened on its own?
Well, I would start with my family. I mean, they really are so important in keeping me grounded and sane, and they're probably the greatest advocates for me trying to find balance in my life, and I don't know if I'd put them in the fans or followers category, but my family category, they're the third. They probably fit in those other two occasionally as well. And my kids have been tremendously supportive. This work is time consuming, and over the years I have worked the typical 70-hour week for years and years and years, and but always tried to make time to be at the things that were most important to them, and at the same time they've encouraged me. I mean, they've never complained about it, which is fantastic. I think that the network that I consider most important to me are colleagues across the country. So I do some national work as well. I'm on the American Hospital Association board right now, and I serve on a number of other national groups and boards. On the way here today, I was on the phone with my fellow officers on a national group called Health Insights. And through those kinds of contacts, I've built a network of colleagues that are instrumental in my ability to test ideas, to ask others how have you handled such and such a circumstance, and certainly within my organization, I have a leadership team that I consider to be absolutely the best I've ever worked with in my 40 years, and we encourage each other, we manage each other up. We work as a team. It's not one person, so that's an important group that I nurture very carefully.
Well, and I'm sure they feel it too, and I'm sure they're a great team because they do have a great leader, so there's a lot to be said there. I love what you said about your kids. I have two sons in their 20s, and I started my business around the time that I had the kids, and I had this terrible guilt, like, oh, they're going to be ruined because I work so much. But when my older son graduated from high school, he gave a speech, and right up there in front of everybody in the world, he said, "Yes, and I learned work ethic and the value of a work ethic from my mother."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh my God!"
You can check off the box. So I successful parenting right there.
I could never have asked for a greater gift, because I really did think that they were going to turn, because I put them in daycare like the moment they were eligible.
I took my youngest, no, that was my oldest actually. I finished my residency at Emory, and they asked me to stay on as the director of materials and purchasing for a short period of time while they were hiring somebody, and that ended up being a 9-month assignment. And in that 9 months, I happened to get pregnant. And about the 6th or 7th month, they came to me and said, "We would like to keep you on as what we called at that point assistant administrator." So it'd be like a vice president of services in the hospital. I said, "I'd love to do that." So Ryan was born on July 11th, and on July 22nd, I was at my first meeting, and he was in a little carrying thing shoved under the CEO's secretary's desk.
Shoved. Keyword shoved.
And she was rocking him with her foot while I was in the meeting in the office. And oh my gosh, stories. Yes, I have a bunch of those like that. So
and I'm sure Ryan turned
out
fine.
Perfectly. He's a cardiothoracic anesthesiologist at Northwestern. So he turned out okay.
Yeah. Well, he was
as did my daughter.
From under that desk.
Yeah.
So you have two.
Yes. Yeah. Ryan and Claire. Yeah.
Any grandchildren yet?
I have 3 grandchildren.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
I keep telling my sons, especially want a granddaughter, but don't want to rush it too much.
That's right. Come in their own time.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Is there a book or a website or an app that you have found helpful in your career, and why is that?
Well, I am a sucker for any type of organizing app I can find, because I'm a list maker, and I still use paper to some extent, but I have any number of apps open all the time with to-dos and things like that.
What's your favorite to-do app?
I don't even know the name of it. It just comes up on my I had to have one where you could check the box.
Oh yeah.
That's important.
Gives you satisfaction.
Yes, it's right.
One question. Yes. After you finish doing something, do you sometimes write it in so you can have the satisfaction?
Absolutely.
That shows a little element of OCD, but I have it too.
Absolutely. And funny you say OCD, because I tease my daughter. She has the worst OCD I've ever seen. And she knows it, but she got it from me. There's no doubt about it. So
I mean, you have a lot of doctors I think we all have a little bit of everything. It's just a different varying
and how
degrees.
You express it.
Exactly, yeah.
She expresses it by having to organize my refrefrigerator. So, I'm fine with that.
She could be the Marie Kondo of America. I sometimes listen to that audiobook, The Magical Power of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo, just because I love getting a little boost of organization.
So, and I subscribe to all the typical kind of industry or field newsletters and things like that come across my screen every morning. I like to also look for things outside of the field, because I think there's a lot to learn from other industries. And of course, I couldn't live without my Delta app.
Oh.
I travel a lot.
Oh, Delta.
Not the faucet.
Well, I was thinking because there's Delta ambulance service.
No.
So Delta is your favorite airline.
Yeah.
Oh, good. And do you fly out of Bangor, Maine?
Just depends where I am.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So Delta is the selected airline. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I use Expedia, and I'm looking for the best price and connections.
Yeah.
So what would be your one piece of advice for someone starting out in their career?
Go into it and establish the pattern or the habit of lifelong learning, and just be open and listen and ask good questions and take risks, as I said earlier, volunteer to participate in things that might be outside of your job description, and display, enthusiasm for the work. It's so important, the difference between someone who you can tell has enthusiasm versus those who it's not. You can tell the difference between someone who thinks about it as work and somebody who thinks about it as a career or a vocation.
I agree, absolutely. And that enthusiasm, that's why I wear orange all the time, because that's the color of enthusiasm.
And your walls are orange.
Yep, I'm definitely an orange person, and that means enthusiastic.
Yeah.
So is there a parting thought you'd like to share with the audience today?
I would say that people who get the privilege of working in Maine should be thankful for that. I came here from Montana, which was a great place to work and live as well, but Maine is very special. And I think sometimes I'm going actually from here to a meeting that the governor called for this afternoon to talk about the 10-year plan for Maine. And really looking forward to that. But I think people in Maine, there's a lot of blessings here, and stop and realize those and embrace those.
I agree, absolutely. I think it's there's a lot of high quality people, and of course the natural environment. I know that you live on Mount Desert Island, and I'm heading there today, and I know it's just like it's the Garden of Eden.
It's magical.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So my final question is to help PR Maven Nation connect with you. What are some of the best ways our listeners can get in touch with you?
Well, they certainly can get in touch with me through my email. That's out there, mhood@northernlight.org.
mhood or just
mhood?
mhood, okay. At northernlight.org.
Yeah. And I think you can go to our homepage on our internet site, and there's a place where you can submit a question, and my folks do a great job of getting those to me, and I try to answer every single one. So
that's great. And LinkedIn, you're on LinkedIn?
LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I am on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Good. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure, Michelle. Thank you for coming.
You.
I know we had a little false start yesterday due to technology, but I always think it's much better to do it face to face. So
I've totally enjoyed it.
I'm glad we were able to connect. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, PR Maven Nation, for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you at the party in September. That's it for this week's episode. I'd like to thank you for listening, and if you feel that you've gotten value out of today's conversation, consider leaving a 5-star review on iTunes or whatever app you're using to tune in. If you haven't subscribed yet, you should do so. I release a new episode each week, and subscribing will make sure you get an alert when there's a new episode. You can also join the PR Maven Nation by going to prmaven.com/nation and clicking join. It's free, and it's a great community of like-minded individuals who are all looking to learn and grow from one another. If you have an Alexa-enabled device, be sure to add the PR Maven Marketing Minute to your daily flash briefing menu. Thanks again for listening, and have a great rest of your week, PR Maven Nation.